Hello and welcome to B2B Revenue Leaders. I'm your host, Dustin. This podcast is brought to you by Testimonial Hero. The customer content playbook is out of date. Case studies are rarely read and reviews are usually gamed and bought. So Testimonial Hero creates customer video content that you can use throughout your entire buyer's journey to build trust and close more deals faster. On this episode, I'm joined by Aaron Branson, who is the Senior VP of Marketing at Netsurion and CEO of Revup Marketing. And it's budget season, so that's pretty much what we're talking about. We also discuss what the ROI of measuring ROI is. That's pretty meta, I know. And how to forecast effectively as a marketer so that you actually have a say in what your budget is. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Dustin?
Doing well. How about you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, but we're going to talk a little bit about ROI, marketing's position in the C-suite, revenue modeling, how that ties into goals. But I want to start off with something you actually posted on LinkedIn the other day, which was super interesting. And you asked the question of what's the ROI of measuring ROI? Because I've spent many hours trying to measure the ROI of something. Let's unpack that. Like, what do you mean by that? And what made you really think of that?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to see kind of like a pendulum swing from really granular, really sophisticated marketing attribution, kind of seeking that holy grail of attributing every marketing campaign and tactic to a dollar, to a customer. Yeah. And I think we've seen definitely benefits of doing that, but also it hasn't fully been fulfilled. And I think we all kind of knew that the buyer journey is a spaghetti bowl of turning directions, 50 different touch points, and it's not totally feasible to do so. But I think the biggest problem was all that energy, all that time, and even money invested in building really fancy dashboards, pulling in data from everywhere, really driven by the CEO or the CFO or the board asking, what's the ROI of our marketing investment? So CMOs, marketing leaders definitely tried really hard to say, I will accommodate that request. And I can do that. We're going to show you the data. We're going to show all this detail. And really these executives that are non-marketers didn't really have the attention span or the knowledge, the marketing knowledge to really want to dedicate the time to hear that story. They just wanted to hear some simple facts. So I see the pendulum swinging from really giving that granular analysis and seeking that holy grail of being able to tie every dollar spent to a customer or to a fraction of a new customer to let me just show you the overall ROI of the marketing program as a whole. Now, if it's not hitting that number that you want to see that ROI, then we can have a separate conversation and drill into the marketing strategy, the marketing tactics. But I think in the past, we skipped over that step and went straight for the granular stuff.
Yeah, the trouble with the granular stuff, actually, there's two. One is you just can't measure most of it because everything is absolutely connected. And because of that, you might shine a light on something and the CEO says, what do you mean the return on that channel sucks? When because you're in the weeds, that drives all this other stuff. I just can't track it, right? Like anecdotally, the thing works. And what brought this, like you always know this as a marketer, but what brought it to life for me was when I started actually asking people how they heard about us. And turns out all my Google leads aren't from Google. It's from this podcast or from LinkedIn or like an event, right? And they just end up on Google as their last search term.
Yeah. Interesting little anecdote on that. We started collecting that same level of information. Another pendulum swing was make the lead gen forms as short as humanly possible.
Yeah.
To optimize conversion. So we dropped things like, how did you hear about us? Because we were going to rely on the UTM parameters, the cookies to tell us all this stuff. But we recently added that back and we saw that same level of insight of, well, that looked like a Google pay-per-click or a Bing pay-per-click even. But when they say, I spoke to Richard at the whatever conference, okay, that changes everything as far as attribution of that opportunity.
Yeah, we always seem to swing too far, especially with tech, right? So you mentioned, what senior leaders actually care about, what the C-suite cares about. And I know you care about marketing's position there and how they can kind of elevate into that and have those conversations. So that granular ROI is not the way to do it. Like you said, measuring at a program level is, but I want to get to like more on the forecasting side, how do you decide, what programs you need to spend on, what channels you need to spend on if you're not doing that granular measurement?
Yeah. Now I definitely think that marketing attribution still has a place, absolutely,
Yeah.
but it has a place within the confines of the marketing team. Do that. Who owns that channel? Who owns that campaign? Let's analyze that with its appropriate metrics
Hmm.
to see if that channel is performing. Should we cut it? Should we double down on it? It just doesn't belong necessarily in that executive report where the CMO is meeting with the CRO, the CEO, and the CFO.
Yeah.
Not unless there's something missing the mark, and then they can start to unpack that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think kind of related to that a little bit is it's budget season for most of us right now, right? We're all thinking, hopefully you've already been thinking about 2024 because it's almost here. But if not, you're like deep in the weeds of figuring out, okay, these are my targets, which likely have been assigned to you. What is my budget? Or this is my budget. I have my own views on how the interplay there between C-suite and marketing breaks a lot of the times. Sometimes it's done really well. Sometimes it's not, and it's kind of all smoke and mirrors on the forecast side. So I'd like to get your thoughts on, how to effectively do that and how to elevate as a marketer so you can have, a say in what your budget is, what the target is.
Yeah. I think in an ideal situation, everyone's in a war room doing revenue modeling together. You've got the CEO, the CRO, and the CMO at the bare minimum looking at, okay, what is the target for 2024 or whatever year? And if the number comes down from the board that it's 10 million new ARR, the first thing to do is this revenue modeling exercise, which is going to tell you a lot. It's really multi-purpose. First of all, it's going to, when I say revenue modeling, let me explain that a little bit because we can mean different things. Basically breaking that number down into where's that coming from? Out of that 10 million, let's say you divide that into 4 revenue streams. You've got new direct customers, expansion of your direct customers. And then let's just say we have a channel program. So we're going to acquire new resellers and we're going to expand out of our existing resellers. So we got these 4 streams here. And then we're going to make decisions of what is marketing's role in sourcing revenue out of those 4 streams. New customers, maybe 75%. Expansion of a reseller's customers, maybe 0%. Maybe that's all account managers that need to nurture that reseller, enable them and push them forward. But ultimately, revenue modeling, now we can do objectives and key results for marketing and we can articulate specific numbers. And then now we have targets. Do those look realistic? Let's find out. From there, we can start to use your funnel, your average deal size, the conversion rates in the funnel, waiting rate, lead to opportunity, opportunity to qualified opportunity. Everyone's got different stages that they define. But ultimately, you're going to come out with a pipeline that you need to generate. And if you also have an ROI expectation of 5-fold, you can also generate a cost per opportunity. And you also know from that revenue modeling, how many opportunities you can generate the core budget and say, if that's the OKRs, this is the budget. Now, that's in an ideal situation. A lot of times they come down and just say, here's the target, here's the budget. So even in that case, I would encourage someone to say, I'm going to do the math myself. And I'm going to at least shine a spotlight on the disconnect so we can have a conversation and go in eyes wide open that you wanted 10 million. You gave me $500,000 budget. The math shows I need 1.5 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's a great way to at least elevate and have that conversation. And it can go one of 2 ways. It could be, okay, this person did their homework, they get it, or could go the other way and you realize maybe this isn't the best company for me to be at and a bit unrealistic.
It at least elevates, maybe gets the respect you need, the trust that you need to go do what you do best as far as the marketing strategy and the marketing execution. Because they can at least trust that you understand the financial side of the business.
Yeah, this is similar to how I've usually forecasted. The thing I like there too is you can play with the conversion numbers and figure out which ones you can actually influence and change, right? So maybe let's just say your lead to op sucks because no one's actually booking a call. Okay, how can we make remove that friction? Maybe your win rate sucks. How can sales improve that? So I think that really
Yes.
helps. The one thing I've
Abs-
struggled with, which I want your thoughts on, is, you mentioned cost per op and then how much money you would need. It doesn't scale like linearly. Like I wish it would. Like my cost per op is always going to be $1,500 and I can spend infinite money, but it doesn't work like that. So there is a point of, diminishing returns where ops become more
Right.
expensive. So I'm curious how you think through that and maybe model that.
No, that's a great challenge, and I don't have an answer to that one, but yeah, there is some historical data and it's different per channel.
Yeah.
So then you can, this would be a good guideline, but you could get deeper. That's a great point as far as what percentage of our business came through digital. So search marketing, just to take an easy one, because that's an area where we see that law of diminishing returns a lot. You don't just campaign more dollars and expect the same linear trajectory. But yeah, that's a tough one to layer in there.
Yeah. And especially some of the things that don't scale or aren't directly attributable are usually the ones that kind of that multiplier behind the scenes that make all the other conversion rates better. So that's why I like your idea of not looking at the granular channel, because it lets you have, maybe as a marketer, you have a slush fund on the side of, these are things we're going to do from brand flywheel. Let's grow this perspective, not a here's $10. I want $100 back in Google ads. Right.
Yeah. I love the gumball machine mentality. If you're going to get marketing $1, they're going to give us $3 back at least.
Yeah. I wish it was like that. Sadly, not so much. And then I do want to talk through, a lot of this comes down to data, right? And both marketing and financial data and sales data, which sometimes is siloed and messy across multiple places. So it can be hard to do this math. And usually it's in a Google sheet, or massive Excel files you're trying to work through. So thoughts on that? Like, how do you actually consolidate it all?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something, I ran into myself over 8 years as a CMO here. Yeah. Building spreadsheets and having to own the data. And there's two pieces of data: the financial data, what's being spent, what money's going out. Do I have immediate access to what's been committed, contracted, what's spent and out the door, what's yet to be allocated? You need that data. And my recommendation is don't rely on accounting. They'll take the ball and run with it. But then you've got to wait. And then they track it differently on the P&L. They track the categories differently than you would as a marketer. Everything's kind of scooped under something called advertising, which that's not what that was.
Yeah.
So owning the data on the expense side. And then of course we are all familiar with owning the output in the CRM and fighting that battle of data hygiene on the opportunities. Owning those two pieces of data and then, yes, it starts out in a really messy Google spreadsheet that you probably customize over years and years. But then the problem is scale. How can you delegate that to your team members to track expenses? You can't be bogged down with expense management and administrative duties. You want to be doing strategy. You want to be inspecting the outcomes of your team and fine tuning. So actually through that experience, I'm actually working on a platform to bring that together. It's nearly there. We're planning to launch it in December 2023. So not very far off, called Revup. And it's a marketing financial performance management platform. Brings together the budget, the expenses, the objectives, the key results, and really is meant to be kind of the CMO's dashboard. So we're excited to pull that together to get rid of the 3 spreadsheets and PowerPoint deck and the Word doc and 3 different CRM dashboards that you've exported, and trying to mash that together every time the executive team wants to know what the latest ROI is.
Yeah, no, I think the other benefit there too probably is having it more real-time or real-time-ish at least, because there's nothing worse than setting your budget at the start of the year and you can't change or move anything.
Yes.
And you realize like, oh shit, that experiment did not work. Let's not put that $100,000 there. Let's move it. Or maybe you don't know if it worked or not because you're not tracking it. So I think that's a key thing as well with budgets, in my opinion, and even revenue targets, honestly, is you need some fluidity there, because you're going to have weird years like this year where your budget gets chopped, your target stays the same. You need to have that insight to really understand it all.
Yeah. And that ability to pivot when the opportunity arises, and to be able to confidently know I can move this money from here to there. I know what's available. I don't need to wait for a report from accounting. And don't need to wait for sales to update the CRM, so I can get a clear picture. I have the picture on any given day, and I can move money from bucket A to bucket B, approve that new purchase, and let's go.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I like the idea of that CMO dashboard and the CMO working at a higher level. I'm curious how, like in that world, so you have it set up properly, how the CMO effectively delegates some of the forecasting and modeling to people in other departments that are, at maybe a more granular level.
Right. So yeah, like in that, what we're visualizing in this work stream is the CMO allocating budget to specific directors. Maybe your demand gen director, your event marketing director, your product marketing manager, and they can own a segment of that budget for their particular program. So you delegated some ownership, and you can still move that money around based on, the strategy changes, scenario planning. But then those individual contributors that maybe report into them, or even them themselves, can be responsible for loading the expenses immediately and really spreading that workload out, so it's not an administrative overhead for the team.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value too in having the person closest to it who actually understands it and has not just the numbers, but like the insight and the anecdotal experience to own their budget. Yeah, the similar problem where the board or the CEO owns the marketing budget and the marketer's out of the loop, right? I think you need that trickle down effect where, like you said, every director kind of actually has their own budget and owns it, which can be a little scary to do for some CMOs. They don't want to give away that power sometimes, right?
Yeah. But it empowers them to, hey, you own this, you own the results. They're going to really dial up their effort and their attention with that kind of accountability on them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. And then before we wrap, I do want to ask kind of one question on like this analysis side. We talked a lot about going through, figuring out what's working, reallocating budget, kind of putting you on the spot here, but curious, from having that modeling and having it built out, like, can you think of a time where you spotted something and realized, okay, I need to be fluid. I need to make this change. I need to,
actually one particular program that this was especially helpful for was an outsourced SDR effort.
Okay.
I already had the theory, that probably not the best thing for our organization because of the complicated nature of the solution in cybersecurity. But we're able to look at that ROI. And I wanted to shut down the program. I wanted to reallocate it. I was able to just put it in financial terms that the CEO and the CFO could clearly see, which maybe as marketers, we naturally intuit, we sense it, we feel it. We know it's not a natural fit for representing our brand and closing deals, but that was able to show just how drastically poor this particular program was providing financial return as far as pipeline being generated.
Yeah, I've been in that exact same scenario. Like it either works out really well or not at all. And it's kind of a black box and you don't know what's going on there. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. Depends on how it's executed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I mean, I think we covered kind of the full gamut there on attribution, budget, how to plan it all. I know talk about this and a lot of other stuff on LinkedIn. You have Revup coming up. So where should people reach out, learn more, connect with you?
LinkedIn is the ideal spot. Aaron Branson, AARON BRANSON. That's where you can find me. And Revup is .marketing. That's the URL, not a .com, but .marketing.
There's a .marketing. I haven't seen that one before. Yeah, awesome. Cool. So for our listeners, we'll include those in the show notes. And Aaron, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Dustin. Great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for joining me for today's episode. My key takeaway is just the importance of the marketing leader being involved, not just in the forecasting side, but also in budgeting. Too many times, companies, be it, C-suite or the investors, will pull a magic revenue number out of thin air, ask the marketing leader to build usually, a reverse waterfall forecast showing how many leads they need. And then the CEO or board will just pull a budget number out of thin air and say, go with that. As a marketing leader, you have to be able to build your case as to the budget you need to achieve those goals. Otherwise, you're going in with something that's just unobtainable and it's never going to work out. It's probably why the average tenure of a CMO is about 18 months. So great point there, I think, to focus on budgeting. Thanks again for listening. I'll be back Tuesday with a new episode.